Hey YouTube, this is going to be a relatively short and kind of random video, but I've been talking with folks about bookstores lately, and so I wanted to share my top 5 bookstores in the United States. Um, I love bookstores. I often spend time in them when I travel. I don't necessarily buy stuff, although I usually try to grab even just a gift for a friend to support local bookstores. I particularly really get excited when a bookstore has um, sections that call out to me. Like if I, see like a huge section on disability or queerness or whatever it is, it's always a really good sign. Uh, I also just love going into bookstores and seeing the little staff recommendation things where staff will write something about them. That always just feels so much like more personal to me than um, necessarily reading a review online. Although I do love Goodreads, and I pros and cons. But I will often take a little picture of the staff recommendation for later. So I wanted to shout out 5 bookstores in the United States, and I guess I'll go 5 to 1. So, I'm going to give an honorable mention in this list. I'm not going to put this on the list necessarily because honestly, I don't remember it well enough. Slash, my tastes have changed a lot, but I did go to law school in Iowa City, and so I will shout out honorable mention to Prairie Lights. It's a little bit smaller, and it had some good content. I don't remember it having a ton of the topics that I love now, but again, I haven't been there in a while, and it is a well-loved place, being in a city that has one of the best MFA programs for creative writing in the country. You have a lot of writers coming in and out, events, and so honorable mention to Prairie Lights. But number 5 is actually City Lights in San Francisco. So I will say I've been in a couple of bookstores in Oakland, or not in Oakland, in the Mission that I really loved, that I don't remember the names of, and I didn't quite spend enough time in to put them in my top 5, although I suspect I probably would if I spent more time in them, because I remember being really excited about what was there. But I am going to put City Lights because I think historical significance wise, of course, if you're familiar with the Beats, it's a place people like to go just to have been there, which is kind of what I did. But I really like it. Has a very cozy feel. It's very windy, so when you feel like you're kind of getting lost in the stacks. They have amazing poetry collection upstairs. They have some fun sort of signs and art on the walls, and it feels like a place where it's fine to sit down and just read a book for a while. So City Lights, number 5. Number 4, the Tattered Cover in Denver. This is located near Union Station in Denver. It's a big sprawling bookstore. They have some really good, they're like a little coffee shop in the front too, has some really good stuff, including vegan options for drinks. And I only put it at number 4 because I was not super impressed by their selection of queer books the last time I went, which is one section I always check. But they do have a really good selection. They're a good place for little gifts, so they have a lot of other, besides books, they have lots of little kind of tchotchkes and things that you could pick up for somebody on your list. They had a really nice selection of, last time I was there, journals, not just blank journals, but journals with prompts kind of thing, which I'm kind of into. So yeah, I would put them in number 4. Oh, and by the way, Tattered Cover, there's a big one by Union Station. There's a smaller one in Union Station, which is fine, but that's just an offshoot, so go to the big one. Number 3, gonna do one for where I currently live. So Kramer Books in DC. Kramer Books is actually, it's a bookstore, and there's also a full cafe, not just a coffee shop, a full cafe attached. And I think they do I believe they do live events, music and stuff. At night sometimes. They're open super, I don't think they're open 24 hours, but they're open super late, so that's a plus if you're a night owl. And they do have a really good selection of feminist and queer books. It's a little tight, space is a little tight, and you're moving around. It's very popular, there's a lot of people in there, but yeah, I always find gems there, so I will say Kramer Books at number 3. Number 2, a recent find that I totally fell in love with is, it's called A Room of One's Own. It's in Madison, Wisconsin. A little off the beaten track, I guess. But, oh my gosh. Really good book recommendations, tons of those little staff recommendations, so that you can really just sort of go through looking through those. They have a really good queer section. They have a really good sci-fi fantasy section that I noticed had a fair representation of a diversity of authors there. They have quite a few sections, and the layout is very generous. I mean, it's in the Midwest, so they have more space. The layout is very generous, and so you can definitely like spend time there walking through. They also have a lot of cool little gifts and things. I noticed in the queer section they just had a bunch. You could buy little pride flags. That was a nice touch. And then number one, drum roll. Number one is Elliott Bay Books in Seattle. I have a new reason to go to Seattle, but I had really wanted to go to Seattle, like back to Seattle, just for that bookstore. Like that bookstore, I may have cried a little. I was so happy. They just, in terms of like having big sections of the things I care about, tons of marginalized voices, like on point, amazing, super tall shelves full of all of that. They have a really good comics section, so if you go to a comic shop, but they actually have like quite a good comic selection. They had board games and all sorts of things. They do events. Like I actually was there for a friend's reading, like trans anthology. But they do a bunch of different events. They have a cafe. It's like 2 stories, really huge, and just very worth. I mean, literally, I was considering going back to Seattle just for this bookstore. So if you haven't been there, if you're in the Pacific Northwest, give it a try, and let me know below what are your favorite bookstores in the U.S. or otherwise. Thanks.